The tour started on a disappointing note for Team India in Sydney. But slowly, things started turning around. Despite some great performances from the likes of Steve Smith in the green and gold, Australia recorded back-to-back wins. There was some consolation from Hardik Pandya and Ravindra Jadeja, and that signaled a change in momentum as India raided the Australian capital and made it back-to-back wins of their own. My 11 Circle presents CricbuzZLive, looking ahead at the remainder of the T20 International Series. Yes, there was a point we were saying, oh my God, could this possibly be 10-0 after those first two games? That is history. It suddenly looks as if India have landed and they're there to stay. Two T20 internationals to follow at the Sydney Cricket Ground. The first of those two is what we look ahead to today. In the company of Michael Vaughan and Zaheer Khan, so much happening around the world, so much to talk about, but it's Sydney that is our focus today. A very good morning / good afternoon, gentlemen. Zaheer, momentum with Team India, it's something they'll want to carry forward for a myriad reasons.
They will be looking forward to for sure. I think this game is going to be a very crucial one. The pressure is on Australian side. You know, when you're one up in the series and getting to the next game, you know, it's always going to be tough one. They've lost their captain, you know, so that is something which will put that added pressure on Australian team. Not only from the captaincy point of view, but also the kind of form Finch has been in. He's been very devastating. He's been in very devastating form. That is something which Indian bowlers have been finding it tough in the start of the innings. So I think they'll be happy that Warner and Finch both are not there to start the Australian innings.
Michael, it's that old adage, when it rains, it pours. We haven't had a literal drop of rain, but everything seems to be affecting the home side.
Yeah, it's amazing how things turn so quickly. You know, Australia had all the momentum when they got on their bus from Sydney to Canberra, and it's all kind of been stopped by the Indian bus because they played well. They've obviously defended nicely in Canberra. I just think on tours like this, it was so important, and for everyone watching as well, that you need a competitive series between two powerhouses of the world. And I think we're going to get one. Whether we get one in the Test series, that's another kind of question to answer. But in terms of T20 cricket, we shouldn't be surprised of the win for India because of the success they've had in T20 cricket over the course of the last year. They've been outstanding. In 50-over cricket, they haven't been. So, again, we shouldn't have been expected too much from the Indian 50-over side. Australia have got everything to do. They're obviously missing players. They've not been playing great. That middle order batting is a real concern for Australia. So I'm looking forward today to see how the Aussies bounce. But we used to talk about how the Indians have been bouncing back. It's now down to the home team to try and bounce back.
Yeah, you noticed that little graphic we put up there. Nobody has successfully chased in this series so far, and India have won the toss and opted to chase. So they will be the first team to successfully chase on this particular tour. Not that that's a huge achievement, but that is, of course, if they do so. But Zaheer, a quick one before we look at the playing 11s. Not often you see a captain giving away what's going on in your mind. But he was pretty clear, Virat Kohli, that they don't have Aaron Finch. We're bowling and we're going to come hard at them.
Absolutely. And in this format, you've seen a lot of teams prefer to bowl first. Particularly the time is short, so you know when you have a target in mind, it's easy to pace your innings. At times when you're batting first, you kind of not sure of what is the exact total on this particular surface, or you can take time in assessing the surface. So many teams you've seen prefer to bowl first, and that is one of the main reasons I think, you know, Virat has chosen to bowl first, having Finch not there to open, having Warner not being there. They can certainly look to be aggressive and pick those early wickets and set the tone for the game.
Yeah, there's possibly been lots of cake in that Indian dressing room because there are multiple birthdays there. Birthday boy, Shreyas Iyer, who didn't play the previous game, is coming in for this particular game. Another one, Ravindra Jadeja. Hopefully they wouldn't have got any cake on either the hamstring or the head. Just had a nice, quiet celebration there. And of course, Jasprit Bumrah not playing today, but also will it's all of us say happy birthday to him. Yuzvendra Chahal technically is a replacement because he played the last game as a concussion sub. So today he comes in as a full-fledged member of the 11, along with Shardul Thakur coming in for Mohammad Shami, who's been rested, And there you can see Shreyas Iyer coming in for Manish Pandey. Quick reaction to that playing 11, Zaheer. Chahal being the expected inclusion.
Obviously, Chahal was expected to play this game after that last man of the match performance, and he bowled brilliantly. Shardul Thakur had a good run in the last ODI, so the team management must be debating, okay, why we didn't keep him in the T20s. Now they have the opportunity, so they've got him straight in. With his variations, I think they had the dilemma of using the new ball. They had three options. Today they are more comfortable with using Shardul with his variations later in the innings. So that has, I think, made the decision easier for them in favor of Shami resting this game and Shardul coming back in.
Yeah, which means plenty of options for all of you. It's not an easy day, folks. It's a Sunday, but we're going to make you work a little extra hard when you pick your My 11 Circle teams. The app is easy to download, but it's a little tougher to pick your teams with so many changes. You've got to focus on them. We've already told you about the Indian 11. We will be talking about the Australian 11 because a few forced changes for the home side. So all of you who've put in Aaron Finch, have him as captain, take him right out. He's not the skipper. We already saw Matthew Wade coming out to toss. He'll be the captain and keeper. Marcus Stoinis, the big, decent news from an Australian perspective is Marcus Stoinis comes back into the lineup. He was in form earlier on in the IPL, of course, and a cap for Daniel Sams and Andrew Tye, Michael Vaughan. We've been talking about him as that sort of T20 specialist in a sense. So Hazelwood, no Hazelwood, no Stark.
Yeah, I mean, that Australian team just, it doesn't hit you with too much fear. I mean, you look at the batting, it pretty much stops at number 6. There's no depth in that batting lineup. Good variations with the ball. And I wouldn't expect Marcus Stoinis to bowl. I think he's probably in just as a batsman because he obviously picked up that injury. I can't think that Australia will risk his bowling. But he's a powerful opener in T20 cricket, does so well in the Big Bash. But it really is actually both sides. You look at the top 6 are going to have to do the majority of the batting. India will miss Jadeja's batting hugely because of what he's achieved in the last couple of games. So it's down to one of those top 3 or 4 to stick the hand up to get the big individual score and then hope for a couple of cameos around that. If both teams can get early wickets, I think they'll both fancy winning the game. And what you get in Sydney in terms of a pitch is a very fair one. I don't think it favours batting first. I don't think it favours the chasing team. I think it's a real fair wicket that whoever comes out and plays the best cricket on the day generally wins the contest. That's what happens in the Big Bash and T20 cricket. It's just down to getting your individual players producing some magic. And if you can do that, you generally win the game. So it's just really down to that top 4 batting. The top 4, and you hope for a cameo from an Indian perspective from Hardik, and I guess from Australia they'll hope for a cameo from someone like Matthew Wade in that middle of the innings or Maxwell. And if they do that, they'll get a big score. But you just fancy that the kind of shift, and with the injuries of Australia, that it's kind of all shifted towards India. So India are quite clear favourites for today's game.
Certainly are. Michael Vaughan's mentioned Maxwell, Matthew Wade, Marcus Stoinis perhaps playing only as a batsman. But there's somebody in that lineup who will probably have a little bit extra pressure on him. Number one, because of the loss of Aaron Finch and the general changes to the Australian side, and doesn't have a great record against Team India in T20 internationals. And that is, of course, Stephen Peter Devereux-Smith, such an iconic player. But we have actually put him in as our My 11 Circle trump card, because if you're thinking advantage India, if you're going to put in Aaron Finch and you're taking him out, a good person to put back in is Stephen Smith. That's not a great record, Zaheer, but he's a class player, and we always say one innings away from a big one. Today is a good day to do it for Australia.
And look at the kind of form he has shown so far in the series. So I don't think you can look too much into these numbers. He's a class player. He's one of those top 4-5 players in the world cricket, which we often speak about. So I think he will not be bothered about these numbers. He's got a terrific record otherwise against India. So that is something which Indian bowlers will always be wary of. And you rightly said, you're just one innings away from your form. And Smith in this series so far is the other way around. He just missed out on 1 or 2 occasions. So that is something which Indian bowling unit will be wary of and would want to sort of continue with the numbers which you've shown. I think for Indian team, it's important that Smith continues with the kind of numbers you just displayed, and get out cheaply for them to give a good initiative to work into that lower middle order, which has not been consistent for Australia.
Michael, one of the things we attributed to Stephen Smith's success, those 2 back-to-back hundreds and 62 balls, was the relaxed nature he could play, because he looks at his batting lineup to follow and he says, there's plenty to come, I can relax and play. He can't have that mindset today, can he?
No, I'm interested to see how he comes out and plays, because I just think in T20 cricket in general, not just for Australia, but in the IPL, he's just been a little bit too hectic. I think he's been trying to hit too many boundaries. I think he's the kind of player that you'd say to Stephen Smith, look, we'd like to bat around you. You know, you just play, you just knock the ball around. Obviously, you'll find the boundaries naturally because he's such a good player. So really, he should be taking his 50-over mindset in terms of the way that he approaches his innings into T20 cricket. And if it is that he only strikes at 100 for the first 15, 20 balls, that's fine, because, you know, he will catch up and he'll end up, you know, getting a 50 or a 60 or whatever he ends up with at a strike rate of 130 plus, which is what you require in terms of a player of Steve Smith. And then you get your cameos and you get your players like Maxwell, who'll score at over 200 for his 15 to 20 balls. That's the nature of T20 cricket. But I just think he's risked a little bit too much in the last few games that I've seen him bat in the shorter format. I think he can be a little bit more conventional. I think he can be that glue, the glue that all teams need, and just, you know, back himself to bat the majority of the innings. If he does that, his strike rate will be absolutely fine.
Yeah, and the reason we keep stressing on Smith and some of the newer players is because Australia have had their share of injury woes, to add to a couple of players who have been given leave for personal reasons. You've got players who've been rested. So combination of all that is not good news for Australia. This is the injury list we're talking about. Marcus Stoinis in that first ODI. He's now come back, probably only as a batsman. David Warner, we saw him go off for that scan with that awful groin injury when he fell over. He's been ruled out for the series. Then came Ashton Agar, who batted a bit when he was strapped up. And in that first T20, a bit of an injury to Aaron Finch. Along with that, we've got Pat Cummins rested. Cameron Green is part of that Australia A versus India lineup, and compassionate leave for the leader of their attack in Mitchell Starc. And this is all that's happening at home. Not really good news for Australia or for any team, whether you're playing away or at home, Zaheer. But at home, you almost feel that it's not as bad at home. You could get in a whole lot of replacements, but these are top quality players.
Well, injuries are never good news. You know, for any team who wants to continue with the winning momentum, you know, you need stability in the side. You need players to understand their roles and then keep on improving on that. Get more comfortable with that. And when you have forced changes, it doesn't really help that cause. So from that point of view, yes, you know, injuries have hampered Australia's momentum in a certain way for sure. But the curious case is the rotation policy. You know, we've seen that not many games have been played in this year, and still to continue with the workload management in this fashion is somewhat still makes me it's still amusing for me for sure to see players are rested in so quick time.
Yeah, we talk about resting over a long summer, a long period of time. It's not been that many games, Michael. And when you see some other players going off due to injury, maybe you need to revisit that policy on the fly.
Yeah, I mean, as Zach said, injuries are never great for the team. I just think it's the nature of the beast in this era that we find ourselves in. Sport, you look at a lot of the football teams, they're picking up lots of injuries. It's maybe something to do with this bubble, you know, this kind of bubble that they're not having the intensity of more games. Generally, you know, cricketers and sports people are playing more and more kind of games around, obviously, the internationals or around the Premier League fixtures. And in this case, obviously, in terms of cricket. But I just wonder whether the intensity is not there away from the game. And then all of a sudden they're playing these games, and you know, that's when you start to get those little niggles that we've seen, the little muscle tears, because the bodies aren't quite used to the intensity of what they're finding themselves out in the middle. And I don't think it'll be wrong of us to say that in the next few weeks, I'm sure we'll see some more little niggles and little kind of muscle tears. It's just going to be the nature of the beast that we find ourselves in. I think if you actually look at the summer that we had here in England, I was staggered and amazed that we didn't get more injuries because of the fact that the players went from pretty much doing nothing to playing high-level international cricket to a great standard, and we didn't get too many kind of little niggly muscle tears, which you generally find in those kind of situations. Australia, they're finding that the luck, if you like, is not on their side at the minute, because they seem to be picking up lots of little niggly injuries. Obviously, Dave Warner looks a little bit worse than 2 or 3 of the other injuries, but little side strains, little muscle tears to the hamstring, calves. That's always an indication that there's not been the intensity, or they've not been able to do the work in the practice to the level of intensity that you get in a game situation.
Yeah, I think Australian fans will be looking at that first test for David Warner more than anything else. They'll be fine if he just recuperates during the T20 international series. As you say, they talk about the rub of the green. Well, it's not been the rub of the green and gold as far as the home side are concerned. But the one issue that kept us on our toes in the last T20 international, we briefly mentioned it on the show, the concussion substitute, Yuzvendra Chahal coming in from Ravindra Jadeja. We've all talked about it. Let's hear about it from the opposition so we can get a little bit more on it. This is Moses Henriques.
The like for like, from my point of view, it would definitely be that one's an all-rounder and a gun fielder, and the other one's just an out-and-out bowler who bats 11. So that's the only thing from my point of view. It had nothing to do with, for the question that I asked, has nothing to do with his hammy. It actually, I guess I'd like to look into whether, that's a like-for-like decision, so to speak. I think the concussion rule's fine. If a player gets hit on the helmet and the doctor thinks he's concussed, 100% he needs to be replaced. There's no doubt. It's just whether it's like-for-like. That's the only thing for me. Whether the players like it or not, concussion players can be replaced, no doubt about it. It's just, I guess, in terms of moving forward and, trying to make the game as fair as possible for everybody. I think, like-for-like replacements are probably the way to go.
Interesting new perspective given by Moses there. We maybe touched upon it in the last game about who replaces who and how the entire system works. So he's not questioning the injuries or the medical doctor's opinion or any of that. He's just saying, fine, concussion happened, hamstring happened. I'm not bothered about that. But the like-for-like replacement, a gun fielder, that's what the replacement that he's talking about. Zaheer?
Well, if India had a like-to-like replacement for Jadeja, he would have been part of playing 11. That's the way I look at it. He would have been good enough to fit into the playing 11. He wouldn't have been sitting in the substitute bench. But I think the match referee decides who is going to be the concussion sub. So obviously they didn't have the like-to-like replacement for Ravindra Jadeja. So you have to go for the next discipline, and Jadeja's role primarily is as a bowler, and that's how he got replaced by Chahal, because that's the only option which was available in the reserves, and that's how the rule works. I think it's something which everyone needs to understand, and if it was the case, if something had happened of this sort, like a concussion injury to Ravindra Jadeja while Indian team was fielding, and then they had to bat later, it still would have been Chahal. And that would have been the discussion completely different, saying that Chahal is not exactly like-to-like replacement, but India would have to live with that. So I think that's something is the nature of the rule, and the good part here is the neutral body decides who is going to be the concussion sub, and in this case it was match referee. So I don't think these kind of questions are up for debate in this scenario.
Yeah, the interesting one, Michael, would have been as he said, had India been about to bat later, and in which case, obviously, Chahal's batting abilities are not what you want to bring on, then would India have been able to push for a batsman to be a replacement? Because Jadeja also bats. He bats pretty well. So could you have gotten a Shreyas Iyer, for example?
I'm not too sure. I thought you were supposed to write your replacements down before the game, but I'm not too sure what happened in Canberra. Very difficult to replace Jadeja. As Zach said, it's quite obvious if you have a replacement, he would be in the side. I didn't quite get Moses' point about the fielding, because Jadeja's India's best fielder, so they were going to be missing his potentially 5 to 7 runs that he stops in the field. He obviously was going to bowl his 4 overs of spin, and they replaced him with someone that could bowl 4 overs of spin. So, I think you can always point the finger at these concussion kind of replacements and question either way, is it fair or not? They're the rules. India didn't break the rules. They went with the rules of the game. David Boone was a match referee. He officiated it in the right fashion. I think Virat Kohli said after the game, they just got a bit lucky with the concussion replacement today. It worked in their favour. In time, it'll work against India. It's just the nature of the beast of the concussion replacements. It's good for the game. It's important that it stays in the game. And there's going to be situations and times where it goes with you, as it did for India in Canberra, and against you, as it did for Australia in Canberra. But over time, it'll level itself out.
Yeah, again, we remind you of that scenario in the day-night test match for Bangladesh when they didn't have any like-for-like replacements when Liton Das was injured. Mehdi Hasan Miraj had to come into the side, but because he was supposed to be a like-for-like replacement, all he was allowed to do was bat as and when he got the chance. He was not allowed to bowl because we know he's a bowler. But he came in for a batsman, he was not allowed to bowl. So that's how it goes if you don't have a like-for-like replacement. But so many other issues we're talking about, and one of them is a feature of our Ask Cricbuzz Live question. And let's see what the question is, and we can lead into that. Saish Patil has come up with this, and he says, for Indian team members like Mayank Agarwal, KL Rahul, Jasprit Bumrah, Mohammad Shami, it'll be a case of living in a bio bubble, albeit a slightly less strict one in Australia, for close to 5 months when the Australia tour ends. Is playing cricket like this sustainable in the long run? Now, the operative words there, Zaheer, are long run. You've been part of multiple bubbles. Yes, maybe not as a player, but it's still something you have to be part of when you're part of any kind of a squad.
Well, it certainly is. I think in the long run, it can get to you. If particularly if you are a personality who likes going out, who are an outgoing personality, it's always going to find it tough to be restricted with many things.
So naturally, we're ruling you out, Zach.
Yeah, I can adapt to any situation and condition.
There you go.
So I have no issues with the bubble, whether I'm playing or not playing. But yes, you have. I've personally heard few conversations, where people have been concerned about the length of a bio bubble and moving from one bubble to another if they don't have time in between. I think what you'll see happening is that some kind of time off away from bubble, and that which means that players who are finding it tough should be given that opportunity of or choice of moving away from bubble for a while, which is choosing their games and the time in consultation with the management, deciding what is the exact window which they can get out of the bubble and come back in.
Yeah, but there's been a few worrying developments, Michael, and we've just turned that into a list. And as you can see, we had it for Pakistan and New Zealand, players who are found COVID positive. Mujibur Rahman in the Brisbane Heat. Tom Banton has pulled out. And the real one, the England-South Africa ODI, which initially was postponed after the hotel staff is tested COVID positive, it's been cancelled, and there's a possible cloud over the tour, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, that's frustrating from the England perspective. I don't think they've been that impressed with the COVID secure bubble in South Africa. I think they feel it's not quite been secure enough around the team. But you're looking at these bubbles, and can they last? I don't think they can. Going into next year, I think we're all hoping that the world kind of gets back to some kind of normality, because you have to look at the well-being of the individual players, and there's many players that can cope and can they don't have families away from the bubble. I just think those players that got families that can't go and see their kids and be around their families and get away from the game, I think it's important that and reasonable to say that there'll be some players that will be missing certain aspects of a tour, or will miss a series just to be at home, just to spend some time with the family. That's just the situation that we find ourselves. As I said, hopefully by next year, and particularly it sounds in England that we could be in for a normal cricket season. That's all the talk over here, is that by April time we could be pretty much back to some kind of normality. We've got our fingers crossed for that. But if there are individual players, as Tom Banton has just kind of come out and said he just can't cope with going into another bubble, and having 14 days of quarantine and then playing a big bash in another bubble. He's not willing to put himself through that for another couple of months. So understand it. I think we've got to accept that there will be players like Tom Banton that stick their hand up and say, look, it's just not for me at this stage. There'll be players that can cope with it and are more than happy and willing to go and get into another bubble. But it's just the individual kind of players' decision-making process that can give them that option to pull out if need be. And I'm sure all the managements of all the different teams, whether internationally or these franchises around the world, they'll be absolutely fine if individual players do exactly what Tom Banton's just done.
Yeah, in very interesting, different kinds of bubbles in different parts of the world. Certainly, England led the way with having a hotel in the ground itself. Michael was part of that, and it was wonderful to see everyone contained within that. But even that, for a prolonged period of time, can be stressful for certain players. But let's move away from the COVID bubble and get into our quiz bubble, as we tend to do. And inside that bubble, deep in the bubble, sits Joy Bhattacharya, plotting and planning. And this one, he's come out with a tough one. So have a look at this. And this is a question for today. Batting at number 10 in 7th one-day international match, 2 not out. Highest ever one-day international score for country in 20th match. Just 13 matches later, name the cricketer. So it's a bit confusing, but read the question carefully. 2 not out at number 10 in the 7th one-day international match. Highest ever ODI score for his country in the 20th match, which is 13 matches later, which was, well, that's how we're putting it. Just name the cricketer that we are saying. Number 2 not out, batting at number 10 in the 7th one-day international. There you go. Read the question carefully is all I can say. Read every word, the operative part of that being. Now, gentlemen, it's not Moses Henriques, or rather Marcus Stoinis, as we thought might coming into bat. It is Matthew Wade, the captain, opening with Darcy Short. I'm not sure if that changes your thinking in terms of 20 over score for Australia, but it's the Aussies under the pump. Are you giving them a huge score for that My 11 Circle Badge of Honour prediction?
I'm surprised by it. First and foremost, 2 left-handers. I thought they'd have gone left-hand, right-hand and left Wade in the middle to give India something different to think about in terms of left-hand, right-hand combinations in the middle of the innings. But I don't think they'll get a monster score. I think they're going to get 164.
Yeah, that's around where I was thinking. Zaheer, higher than that?
So go for it then.
No, I'm going lower. I'm going 150. 157. Yeah, 157.
I'm going 172 then in that case.
Okay then. So it's a small sort of spread, as it were, 157 to 172, but it generally seems the kind of score with a team under the pump. You're expecting a 180, probably not going to get a 180, and India definitely looking to keep them to a gettable total, because no team in this ODI or T20 series has chased successfully so far. It's India's choice to do so for the first time. That's my 11 Circle Badge of Honour, but this has been our discussion. We'll be back in the 10th over on Cricbuzz Combox. We'll see you soon. My 11 Circle presents Cricbuzz Live.